as Atlético Madrid agree a £34 million fee with Chelsea. The decision on a move to Spain now rests with Conor Gallagher. West Ham have their eyes on three big signings. The deal for Crescencio Somerville has moved on. The first part of the forwards medical now complete. Hi there, welcome along to the Transfer Show. Newcastle's financial situation has limited their transfer movement this summer, but they are in talks over a signing. James Lavundra and Mark McAdam are here alongside me. We'll bring you the details on that one. Crystal Palace have money at their disposal after the sale of Michael Olise, and they've used some of it to sign Ismail Assar. We will look at the state of play with Oliver Glasner's squad. Manchester United have been hit with injuries to two of their big hopes for this season. So as Rasmus Højlund and Lenny Yoro start their recoveries, will Erik ten Hag be tempted to change his transfer plans? We will take you through it all. We are here for the next hour here on Sky Sports News. Let's start off, gents, with Chelsea. And isn't it strange? We've got a young captain who is a fixture in the first team, and Chelsea look set to let Conor Gallagher go. Mark, what is the news on Conor Gallagher as things stand this evening?
It's becoming a theme, isn't it? The academy players that have come through the system, which is what every fan wants to see, are suddenly being used as commodities to generate cash to offset against PSR, which is rules that were brought in by the clubs themselves. It's quite remarkable, but this is very much a situation at play here with Conor Gallagher. So the very latest is Chelsea and Atlético Madrid have agreed a deal, club to club, for €40 million, which is around £34 million. Gallagher is now considering his options. Of course, he can say, yeah, I'm happy with the deal, discuss personal terms with Atlético Madrid, go out to Madrid for his medical and complete the move. However, as of yet, and as we are coming on air at this moment, we've not had any confirmation that he's either agreed personal terms or is heading out to Madrid. So that would suggest to you that he is not entirely convinced that this is the right opportunity for him at this moment. In terms of Atleti, they are still reviewing other potential targets. Whilst they've agreed a deal with Chelsea, it doesn't mean the deal is done. There is still a long way to go to get this one signed and sealed. So it's going to be an interesting next 24 to 48 hours. Clearly, Conor Gallagher has got a huge decision with regards to his future. We know that he's entering the final year of his Chelsea contract, and at 24 years old, in January, he could sign a pre-agreement with another club, or, of course, could leave himself to go on a free next summer and then potentially have the pick of clubs. One to keep an eye on. It feels like, James, that throughout the course of this summer, in January, last summer, we've been talking a lot about Conor Gallagher. Maybe it's getting towards its close.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it, this idea of agreeing a fee, but then it stops. It doesn't necessarily keep going on a transfer. You know, we're seeing this with clubs sort of agreeing fees for players, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that goes all the way through to completion immediately at that moment. It's sort of like just, we've reached this place, then we'll see where we go. We'll talk about contracts, actually, James. I mean, Conor Gallagher could stay at Chelsea. Why isn't his future just at Stamford Bridge, where he is absolutely loved by the fans?
Yeah, and going on from what Mark was saying there, Conor Gallagher's future has been discussed for the last 2 or 3 years, but as each window has now been and gone, he's now in the strongest position he's ever been in, because, as Mark said, he could see out his contract and then join another club as a free agent with what will be quite sizable wages next summer. In January, he could speak to a foreign club and agree a contract to join them next summer, or he can wait out the rest of his transfer window and see what comes in. One thing we do know, he's turned down a new 3-year contract at Chelsea, 2 years with the addition of 1-year option. He turned down a contract offer from the club in June and then back in 2022. And he was a very different situation in terms of where he was as a Chelsea player. He turned down a contract extension because he wants to be a first-team player, first-team starter. Well, last season, he led that squad when it comes to the number of minutes he played in all competitions. His contract runs out next summer. The salary we understand he's been offered in terms of the deals he's been offered this summer from the club, comparable to the highest earners in midfield. However, I think we need to consider the length of the contract offer on show here. 2 with an option of a further year. When you consider what was offered to Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, 8-year contracts, a lot of these new signings have been handed out. And what that does show you is that Chelsea perhaps do not believe Conor Gallagher is a player for them in the long term, hence why they've not offered...
Despite those incredible stats that we were just looking at.
last season he was the shining light alongside Cole Palmer. You would wonder where Chelsea would have been last season if it wasn't for Conor Gallagher's leadership on and off the pitch. But on this note here, if Chelsea really wanted him to stay and saw him as a long-term part of their project, they surely would have offered him a longer-term deal. And now Chelsea in a situation where they have an asset here and they're seeing Conor Gallagher the player and Conor Gallagher the asset. And now, because of the contract situation, we know if they to sell him for what would be 40 million euros to Atletico Madrid in this window, that is pure profit. And what pure profit does, it gives them more wiggle room when it comes to PSR, so they can go out and significantly recruit again in this summer window.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And that word asset, I think, is key. And you mentioned PSR as well. It's just a financial reality these days. Mark, I wonder if, come back into that point you mentioned at the top there about Chelsea selling academy players for big fees in recent years. This appears to be them sticking with this tried and trusted model.
Yeah, it's such a sort of bizarre situation to find yourself in as a football club, that you're actually actively looking to sell young players from your academy because it represents a bigger profit with regards to PSR. Roman Abramovich wanted the Chelsea academy to be the best in class. He invested millions and millions of pounds to make sure the training facilities, the coaches, the pitches, everything was the best it could possibly be, because therefore, instead of going out into the market and spending 60, 70, 80, 100 million on a player, you could turn around to your academy and go, actually, you're the player we need and you're not going to cost us any money because we've already invested in you and your development. Whereas now, it's not like that. They're using these players to generate funds. And it's almost that full circle situation that is fascinating to look at. And when you look at Chelsea, they have been so good at selling players from their academy. You can see Mason Mount is out in front after his move to Manchester United last summer for £60 million. Another one, Ian Maatson, a number of loans in the EFL. Big money for him they received. Tammy Abraham, he's been spoken about this summer about a potential move as well, one to keep an eye on. He's generated more money for the Chelsea coffers. The same with Lewis Hall, who went to Newcastle. Amari Hutchinson, who joined Ipswich Town this summer. One to watch. I really liked him in the Championship last season. He could be a top-class player for Kieran McKenna. And then Ruben Loftus-Cheek, another one. So you can see the money that's being generated by that academy. The fans would probably say, well, actually, I'd rather a few more of those players actually came in to the first team and stayed. Billy Gilmore to Brighton. He's been spoke about as a potential mover this summer. And Tino Livramento to Southampton. Interesting with regards to Tino, went on to make a £30+ million move from Southampton to Newcastle. So again, showing the qualities that he has as a young player from that Chelsea academy. And I think this is something we're seeing a lot with Aston Villa and various other clubs. They're using their academy players to make sure they're generating as much profit as they possibly can. And I guess this is something we're going to have to get used to. Whilst the rules in place at the moment are the way they are, you're going to see a lot of these players that are just used to generate funds. And
there's something sad about that, and I think that is a potential flaw with the rules around profit and sustainability, whereby you'd think that the rules would encourage you to grow players and bring through that homegrown talent. Fans love nothing more than seeing somebody like Conor Gallagher and Mason Mount put the Chelsea shirt on. Where they saw Mason Mount lift the Champions League a couple of seasons ago. That's such a special moment for everybody connected with Chelsea Football Club. But because of these rules, it means that it makes more sense for Chelsea from an accounting perspective to sell somebody like Conor Gallagher for 40 million euros as opposed to selling one of the players they've signed in the last 2 years who haven't worked out, because the way it works in terms of the accounting rules, they could probably make a loss on those players despite selling them for £50 million or more, simply because the amount they pay for them is pure profit if you sell your academy graduates. There's something not quite right in that, but one thing we have seen, especially prior to the 30th of June, we saw Everton and we saw Aston Villa with that swap deal they did with Irabunum and Dobbin. The fact is, you're encouraged to trade players to fit within profit and sustainability rules, and that is why Chelsea have really seen this as an opportunity to allow themselves to buy players who they see being the future of the football club over the course of the next 8 or 9 years, based on the contracts they've given out.
And just one final point on this Conor Gallagher situation, which I think is worth keeping an eye on, is whilst Atletico Madrid and Chelsea have agreed a fee for €40 million, doesn't mean to say that if, say, Tottenham or Arsenal or Aston Villa turned round to Chelsea and said, we'll give you €40 million, they might say, actually, no, it's a different deal for a Premier League side. This is the deal we've agreed with Atleti.
Yeah.
If you want to buy one of our key players, then the deal is going to be different. And I think that's where Conor Gallagher is just sat at the moment thinking, well, if I just think about this decision, it might be a catalyst for one of these other clubs that's been linked to me to pull the checkbook out and say, actually...
The window's open, isn't it?
Yes. We've got a point of a starting point for a potential deal. It doesn't mean it's the same deal for every club, and I think that's worth bearing in mind.
And so many factors as well. Given the fact that this is Atletico Madrid, and you think of the type of player that Conor Gallagher is, you'd think that Diego Simeone would absolutely love him, wouldn't you? Just how hard-working he is as a player, an all-round player. We saw from those stats, James. Maybe he's been on the phone to Kieran Trippier as well and just see what's he like to actually play for, and could this be something that fits me, develops me even more? Or
I think he's the sort of player that any manager would want to have. We saw what happened in the Euros. Gareth Southgate realised that they needed more legs in that midfield. Who was the man he turned to trying to close out a game? 70 minutes, 20 minutes left to play in the game. Who do you turn to? Conor Gallagher, and he did it so well in extra time in the matches during the Euros as well. I think it's worth bearing in mind what Mark was saying there. It may be in Conor Gallagher's best interest to buy his time, because Chelsea in the situation where they have the asset here, if it gets to the 31st of August and the transfer window has ended, they could potentially go without any money for Conor Gallagher, because in January he could maybe speak to Atletico Madrid and sign a pre-contract agreement and join in the summer. So as the days tick down, Chelsea may be willing to take slightly less from a Premier League rival like Aston Villa or Tottenham.
But they're selling to a rival,
if he wants to stay in the Premier League. So that's one thing Chelsea have to weigh up. But I think it's worth bearing in mind, with 1 year left in his contract, Conor Gallagher is in a brilliant situation to decide what he wants to do next.
David, you cover La Liga. Yeah. Could you see Conor Gallagher as a number 8 for Diego Simeone? Is he the right type of player?
Of the week, yeah, I absolutely can. And I just do think that we're seeing now, before it was quite rare to see British players abroad. You know, we used to be able to recognise them because they were so memorable, like a Gary Lineker or a Paul Ince or a Des Walker or someone like that. But now, Gallagher is that 8, that pure 8 sometimes, or who can be a little bit more advanced, or he's such an all-rounder. And I think that if you look at Diego Simeone, he likes players who can, you know, they might have certain defined roles. But actually, do you know what? We had Saul playing at full-back with Atletico Madrid. Saul didn't particularly like it, but he knew he could do the job. And I think, you know, to play for someone like Diego Simeone, I think it's one of those things. It can give you extra levels to your game that maybe sometimes you didn't even know you had, because it's up here with him a lot of the time. I mean, yes, thank you for asking me about that. But, yeah, I think, you know, you guys are the ones with the knowledge. It'd be interesting to see how this one pans out with Conor Gallagher. As you say, like, you know, the idea of 100% pure profit to potentially losing for free, you know, these things are a sliding scale, and you've got to make your judgment and know when to cash in or cash out. Let's talk about West Ham, shall we? Mark, it could be a bumper few days for them. I'm sure Hammers fans are there going, right, OK, got to keep pressing F5 on the laptop, keep across social media. Really exciting names in the mix, particularly Crescencio Somerville from Leeds. And this has had some developments today, so how close are we getting?
We've had developments in the last few moments. The first part of his medical has now been completed. The second part of the medical will be completed tomorrow, before he then finalises the paperwork, signs everything and gets confirmed as a West Ham player. No question, one of the standout performers in the Championship last season for Leeds United. They got so close to a return to the Premier League, beaten by Southampton at Wembley in 46 games, 20 goals, 9 assists for Somerville. And I think you've seen he's got the ability to light up a game with his pace and energy. He can play out wide on either flank, and he'll bring a lot in that final third. And like you rightly say about West Ham, this is an exciting signing and an exciting summer. You've seen so much success under David Moyes in a very specific style of football. And you get the feeling with Julian Lopetegui coming into the club, the way he sets up teams, you know, former Real Madrid manager, he will be using these wide players and these attacking players to really be the emphasis of what his teams do. It won't be about defence first, it will be about getting forward quickly. Yeah. He had, some people had 2 years left at Leeds, hence why there was a deal to be done. We know that Leeds have to be careful financially. So therefore, this was a package that suited them. And West Ham have got what I think is a really exciting 22-year-old, only young, with a player that has so many more layers to his game. So one to keep an eye on, one to watch. First part of the medical completed. We'll expect that to get confirmed tomorrow morning. Then potentially he could head out to the States, where he'll link up with his new manager and teammates, because West Ham are currently on their pre-season tour in America.
Yeah, just think of a player like Somerville, and you think, oh, I wonder if they could fall in love with him like they fall in love with Jarrett Bowen,
Yeah.
or someone like that. Just the wonderful word in the East in Spain, which translates as verticality, which I really like. That directness, that ability to take a player on, to get to the byline, old school winger, not necessarily inverted and cutting in on the other foot. But we mentioned, James, it's an exciting time as a whole, not just the one player. Who else might Julian Lopetegui be looking to bring in?
Well, they've got these wingers now, and now they need a number 9 to put away the chances.
Yeah.
And talks are at an advanced stage now between West Ham and Borussia Dortmund over the structure of the deal for Nicholas Füllkrug. Now, we understand he's absolutely elated. He's buzzing about this move. He's really excited and open to joining West Ham, so we don't expect personal terms are going to be a problem. So West Ham are hopeful of concluding this transfer. I'll bring you another line on Füllkrug in a second, but in terms of other incomings, we know right-back has been a real priority area for West Ham in this window. Vladimir Sofau is the only option they currently have there, with Ben Johnson departing for Ipswich in the summer. Talks with Manchester United are at an advanced stage around signing Aaron Wan-Bissaka from Manchester United. He's into the final year of his contract as well, so he's been weighing up what he wants to do next. We know United are looking for around £15 million for him, so I think we're close to both clubs being happy with the valuation. In terms of what I wanted to say about Nicholas Füllkrug, Sky in Germany are reporting that Füllkrug has spoken to the German national team manager, Julian Nagelsmann, and Nagelsmann's encouraged him to join West Ham. He wanted to get advice from a variety of coaches about what to do next in his career. Over 30 now, so this is the next move he makes. It's going to be absolutely vital for where he heads next. And one thing that Nagelsmann said to him, according to Sky Germany, is that regular time in the Premier League could help his chances and further his chances of being the first choice striker at the World Cup, which is coming up in just under 2 years' time.
Yeah. And off the back of a home Euros as well. I just wonder as well, when you look at how this squad is shaping up now, Mark, with the style of play, which will be, you'd imagine, very different from David Moyes, with Julian Lopetegui now in charge. What is the balance like, and what can they realistically hope to achieve this season with now the sort of forward players and the exciting players they're bringing in?
Well, first of all, you always need to have a little bit of patience. New manager, new players. It's going to take a little bit of time for the existing players to understand exactly what Julian Lopetegui wants from this team in terms of style, work rate off the ball, what they do on the ball. So West Ham fans need to just have a little bit of patience there. And I also think that West Ham are one of those sides caught up in where is success for them? Like, top 8 would be successful. Getting into Europe would be hugely successful. West Ham fans would love to say, well, actually, let's try and push on from that. We've done the Europa Conference League. Now let's try and make sure we finish 5th or 6th, because you have seen under David Moyes that they could be consistent. But Brentford, Aston Villa, Newcastle, Brighton, there will be a number of other clubs that will say, actually, we can punch into that top 8. Top 10, that's where we want to be. And that's where it gets so competitive, because there's no guarantees. So I think the thing that's key for West Ham fans, play attractive, exciting football.
Yeah, for sure.
Pack out that stadium week in, week out. You've seen a continued investment as well, and they're looking to bring in a younger profile. Tim Steiden's done a really exceptional job with some of the recruitment he's done. David Moyes had a big hand on some of those players that come into the football club as well. Obviously, you've seen some changes behind the scenes, not just with the manager. And I think this could be a really exciting time for West Ham. So, again, it's how do you determine success? Is it about league position? Is it about style of football? Is it about getting into Europe? I think the key thing here is that West Ham fans just get behind Julian and just really let him express himself as a manager, because this could be the start of a special era. But they're coming off the back of arguably the most successful 4 or 5 years they've ever had.
Yeah. I guess it's sort of be careful what you wish for when you've had all of this success. And yeah, look, I think with West Ham, we've got to mention it. Lucas Paquetá, this is the thing that's sort of rumbling on in the background. James, do you think, obviously the situation is unclear because this FA investigation continues, but it is unsettling, I would imagine. Do you think that Julian Lopetegui is sort of planning almost like plan A with Lucas Paquetá, who is, I suppose, kind of their most unique and irreplaceable player, and plan B, which is planning without him?
And that's what all well-run football clubs would be doing in this situation, and West Ham will be knowing full well that Lucas Paquetá could be suffering a lengthy ban at some point in time. There's no date yet for this FA hearing after he was hit with 6 charges in regards to that betting. But I think they are in a situation now where they're moving on so that if Paquetá was to be ruled out for a period of time, they have players in the door that can enhance his team and put them on to the next level. I think it's very difficult to replace a player like that. There's not many number 10s that can do what Paquetá can do. I think that would be the final piece in the jigsaw if in the worst case scenario, he was ruled out for a length of time. But it is very exciting to see what West Ham are doing in this window. I think Tim Steidten now, I think there was maybe sometimes moments in time where David Moyes had an opinion on a player and Steidten had another opinion, there'd be a breakdown. Whereas now, under this European model, it's Tim Steidten leading things from a recruitment point of view. And Julian Lopetegui will have his say on transfers and his recommendations. That's part of the reason why Max Kilman has joined the football club, because Lopetegui was so impressed with what he saw from Kilman in that 9 months he had at Wolves. But Steidten is very much leading the operation, and I think West Ham fans are absolutely delighted with what they're seeing and who's coming through the door, because it looks like there's going to be more signings confirmed over the course of the next few days, and there's still 30 days left.
Yeah. I was going to say. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I mean, we're just into August. Deals are happening. Celtic, by the way, have announced a 5-year contract for Paulo Bernardo. He's had a successful loan spell there from Benfica last season. Now this has become permanent across Glasgow. Rangers have made a signing to centre-back Robin Propper from FC Twente. Elsewhere, as Arsenal move a step closer to signing a Euro 2024 winner, we'll be discussing how many more pieces of the puzzle Arteta needs to finally win the Premier League. All right, welcome back. Crystal Palace have made a signing. They've brought in Ismaila Sarr from Marseille. James, exciting attacking move from Oliver Glasner. It'll be interesting to see how these guys go next season, you know, with this man in charge. Of course, he had the tail end of last season and now really starting to put a stamp on this squad.
It was a remarkable end to last season. They won 6 of the last 7 matches. They really seemed to click going forward with Eze, Elise and Jean-Philippe Mateta. And they've had to replace Michael Elise. Unfortunately, he went to Bayern Munich. I think you can see why when you consider from such a small sample size last season what he was able to achieve in a Crystal Palace shirt. But in terms of Ismaila Sarr, some details on the deal. He arrived in London on Monday. He completed the medical on Tuesday. And I think this is a really good deal for Crystal Palace. £11 million initially, plus add-ons. So it could rise to around £13 million. And I think Crystal Palace are aware. How on earth do you go about replacing Michael Elise, somebody who's going to go on and do some incredible things moving forward? But I think Sarr is going to be a really important signing. And you look at that right flank, I think Daniel Munoz was so exciting from an attacking point of view in that right wing-back role, the back end of last season. 4 assists from just 19 matches pretty much. They've not ruled out signing another forward in this window as well. So I think it is a very exciting time to be a Crystal Palace fan. I think Oliver Glasner, ideally, when I spoke to him in February, he said ideally I'd have started work in the summer. I'd have had a pre-season working with a group of players, but because of the situation with Roy Hodgson and the place Crystal Palace found themselves in the table, they had to fast-track his appointment. But Crystal Palace fans, some people I've spoken to said this is the best football we've ever played. And that was in the space of just a handful of matches. So I think this would be really exciting to see because Ismaila Sarr, we saw some brilliant glimpses from him in those 4 years at Watford. He went to Marseille when beforehand there were links with the likes of Manchester United and Liverpool. We wait to see whether he can live up to the potential we know is there.
Yeah, it might be a chance to sort of just rejuvenate the career back in England, maybe eventually get that big move. Let's just compare and contrast a little bit. Michael Elise, the player that the Palace have sold to Bayern Munich, and Ismaila Sarr. So these are the stats. So at Marseille, 3 goals for Ismaila Sarr compared to 10 for Michael Elise. 4 assists, though, compared to 6 for Michael Elise, and 0.9 dribbles per 90 minutes and 5.1 for Michael Elise. Now, look, this does look one-sided, doesn't it, Mark? But these are 2 distinct players. I wonder how would you compare and contrast them in terms of sort of the qualities that they offer, not just the numbers?
Yeah, well, Ismaila Sarr's played in the Premier League, 50 appearances in the top flight already, so he's got that experience at 26 years old as well. He's been around the block, he's got that knowledge and know-how that perhaps he didn't have when he arrived at Watford. You have to remember that Watford paid near on £13 million for him, so the fact that Crystal Palace have got someone at 26 for 11 suggests this could be, once again, a really good piece of astute business from Dougie Freedman and Steve Parish. You've got to look at the work that they've done in the windows over the last few years. Crystal Palace have always been very clever, very wise, and they've spent very well. Just look at, Michael Elise, was available for less than £10 million from Reading not that long ago, and they've turned him into a bit of a superstar. So this is a club that knows how to get the very best, and they're very clever with what they do in the window because they don't have the same funds to operate with like Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United. They're on that next tier down where they have to be wise, and that's exactly what they're doing. In terms of being a direct replacement for Michael Elise, of course, you play on that right-hand side. That's where he's probably at his very best. Can play as a false 9, play down on the left as well. So he does bring that versatility in attack. And we know that Oliver Glasner likes his sides to be all about ball possession, get the ball out wide and be going forward at pace. And I think that's something you'll see exactly from Ismaila Sarr. He will fit into that mould perfectly. Be interesting to see how he gets on and how he develops. But certainly, he's got something to prove as well, coming back to the Premier League. Didn't really work out in Marseille. Just the 5 goals in all competitions over in Ligue 1. And a bit of Europa League experience as well. So, therefore, you'll be looking at this thinking, right, I need to get my career going again. Yeah. This could be the perfect time to do it. I think Glasner, the fact that he turned down Bayern Munich, the way they finished the season, Crystal Palace fans, like West Ham fans, will be saying this could be a really exciting campaign for us. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I loved about the Euros, and especially when that England squad was named, was Crystal Palace, with the number of representatives they had in the England squad. That includes the likes of Mark Gay and Ebere Eze as well. I wonder, James, I mean, we talk about making exciting signs. We've talked about that with West Ham and potentially other clubs as well. But is this window important, perhaps more so for keeping players at Selhurst Park as well as bringing new ones in?
I think so, and in particular, Ebere Eze and Mark Gay, because they impressed us so much for England during the Euros. Top clubs across Europe have been tracking both players for a number of years, and you expect that interest to intensify at some point in the summer, which may come in the form of a concrete bid. But it's worth bearing in mind that Crystal Palace are in a really good situation when it comes to both players. Mark Gay's got 2 years left on his contract. I think Crystal Palace look at what Everton were after for Jarrad Branthwaite. They're looking at north of £70 million for him to leave in this transfer window for Everton. So I think Crystal Palace will be looking for something similar if they were tempted to sell. And in terms of Eze, we know how talented he is and what a brilliant player he is on his day. He would command a high fee as well because he's got 3 years left in his contract.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about excitement in terms about, where a team can, let's say, I think it's unfair to say overperform, but certainly, having the resources that he's got and him playing the football that he wants to play, that we could see that jump up. A bit like we saw with Aston Villa. Crystal Palace I wonder if they could be one of those clubs who do sort of overachieve in that sense. We will wait and see. Is that already half an hour on the transfer show? It's absolutely flying by. But plenty still to come. Quick look at the business that all of the Premier League clubs are doing. And could Barcelona be moving for one of Spain's Euro 2024 stars? Welcome back to the transfer show. Unfortunately, we have some really quite sad news to bring you. This is devastating news. Craig Shakespeare, former Leicester manager, has passed away at the age of 60 after battling illness, especially over the last year or so. Of course, memorably part of the Leicester backroom staff and was assistant manager to Claudio Ranieri when Leicester won the Premier League in 2016. We have got a statement here from the family. It comes through the LMA, the League Managers Association, so I'll read that to you in full. It is with great sadness that we announce the passing of Craig Shakespeare, or Shaky as he was known. Craig passed away peacefully this morning at home, surrounded by his family. Whilst the family are immensely proud of his footballing achievements as both a player and a coach, to us, his family, he will always primarily be a loving and loved husband, father, son, brother and uncle. The loss is devastating to us all, and we would ask that privacy be given at this incredibly difficult time as we try to come to terms with and mourn the loss of a very special